Here in America, we take our trucks pretty seriously, and in the past 6 months, there's been a particular truck that has not only made a massive splash in the truck world, but the car world as a whole. Hold on, just 1 second. But somehow, Tesla managed to beat GM to bringing a real pickup truck to the market. The Hummer EV definitely doesn't count. But now their flagship is here. This is the Silverado EV, and we have the RST package, which has over 750 horsepower and a claimed 440 miles of range. So we're gonna find out how well this serves as a pickup truck, an electric pickup truck, and if this is really a Cybertruck killer. All right, so first things first, design. Chevy clearly wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel, except for when they reinvented the Squircle wheel on the C8 Corvette. They weren't really trying to reinvent the wheel with the design here of the Silverado EV. If you like the ICE version of the Silverado, then you should like the design of this one pretty much just the same. And unlike the Rivian, the Cybertruck, the F-150 Lightning, there aren't a whole lot of, hey, I'm the electric version design cues going on here. It's pretty straightforward. But as you can probably tell, this is definitely on the bigger end of the electric pickup trucks. This car weighs about 8,500 pounds, and I don't know how well you can tell how big it looks on camera, but this is a big, heavy car. And one of the biggest indicators of that is the fact that we have the first factory 24-inch wheels from GM. So this is the first time they're putting factory 24-inch wheels on a car. And it's honestly wild because on this car, the 24s don't look insanely big, but that's just because this truck is absolutely massive. And all that carries over once you get to the inside of this car too. The design is pretty much a direct carryover from all of Chevy's newer SUVs and pickup trucks. Chevy's never really been one to try to reinvent the wheel, unlike the C8 steering wheel, like I said. And this is a perfect example of them sticking to what works, a modern, practical, and functional design that shouldn't age too poorly. Something that I feel like a lot of EVs have kind of sucked at, especially the SUVs, have been back seat spacing, but I have so much room back here. This is definitely working for me. I'm not like a huge guy, but I could perfectly fit 5 people in this car and do a comfortable long road trip, which is what this car is meant to do. Have a lot of space for stuff, and speaking of that, we should check out the bed. So yeah, the bed is pretty big. I don't know the exact number of feet or space, but I'm gonna put it like right here. And it's definitely enough to haul a lot of stuff. But the cool feature is that if you need even more space, you've got access to the rear passenger seats. So you can fold this area down and fit even more stuff if you only need to seat 2 people in the front, which is pretty sick. And then we have our frunk, which is very reminiscent of Hummer EV in terms of size and spacing. As you saw in the beginning of the video, I was able to fit myself in here. I'm about like 5'11", and I was able to fit in here perfectly fine. I also think it's interesting that the pickup truck class is the only segment in the electric vehicle market where every offering has a frunk. The F-150, the Cybertruck, the Rivian, the Hummer EV, those all have frunks, and now this one too, which is super interesting. But glad to see we have a frunk on the Silverado EV. I think it's probably good that my last pickup truck experience was the Cybertruck, because yes, this is competing with cars like the F-150 Lightning, the Rivian R1T. So coming off the back of the Cybertruck, this definitely isn't as impressive of a vehicle to drive. But on paper, this should be the best pickup truck for pickup truck enthusiasts, right? You've got 750 horsepower, about 760 pound-feet of torque. You've got over 400 miles of claimed range, a nice sized bed, tons of utility. You've got like 10 or 11 outlets inside the entire car. You've got air suspension, but I'm not coming away as impressed with this car as I was by the Cybertruck, at least for actually driving. So the big thing is that this car is big and heavy, and so is every other pickup truck in the electric segment right now. They're all extremely big, extremely heavy cars. But out of all the higher end ones I've driven, F-150 Lightning, Rivian R1T with the quad motors, and the Cybertruck, both dual motor and Cyber Beast, this feels the biggest and most sluggish to drive. When taking this thing around corners and bends, it just isn't a pleasant experience. This just doesn't seem like a very nimble, maneuverable car, for a truck. I'm not trying to compare this to a 911 or something like that. I'm thinking about this with a truck driving experience in mind. This doesn't have the best steering that I've experienced in a pickup truck so far. The overall handling just isn't that great. Another thing is ride quality, right? So you have adaptive air suspension in this car, so you can raise it by about 2 inches, I think is the maximum height you can adjust it by for off-roading purposes and things like that. But as far as normal driving, it's fine, and you can tell it's using air springs, but it isn't the best. I definitely feel like the F-150 Lightning is a tad more comfortable. This car feels more at home doing off-road activities than on-road. But right now we're on a nice, smooth, straight with a little bit of bends, and the ride is perfectly fine. This is definitely nitpicking as far as ride quality and comparing it to other trucks I've driven in the past, but ride quality is, I'd say, middle of the road. It's definitely not at the top of the heap as far as the electric pickup trucks that we have on the market right now go. Like I mentioned earlier, the Silverado has over 750 horsepower, and GM has a wide open watts mode, which is basically their launch control. I figured I'd give it a go. We should do some wide open watts. So I think if we go into the settings here, and you just heard that noise. So this car can do a claim 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. There's a car behind me, so let's do it. Oh, wow, that's squirrely. That is squirrely. Wow. All right. Okay, I hit 60. At what cost? I don't know. That was definitely a little sketch. That did not go in a straight line. And for it having 750 horsepower, that was honestly one of the more underwhelming launch control experiences I've had in a car with this amount of power. And I think that just comes down to one, the tires not having a super wide profile. I think they're 275s all around, so not the widest set of tires for a car this big, and the fact that it's extremely heavy. This car weighs over 8,000 pounds, and you're just not going to be able to get around that. Honestly, I see no reason to do wide open watts mode. It's not something I really had fun with, and if anything, it was a little scary, to be quite honest. That was squirrely, and I heard other journalists on this trip say that it was not very easy to keep in a straight line, and that's pretty much what I just experienced. So yeah, that's not very cool. This car also has 4-wheel steering, just like the Cybertruck, and they didn't give us exact numbers on the degree of steer that you have on the rear wheels, but it does make it decently maneuverable for getting around town and stuff like that. Parallel parking into tight spaces. It definitely isn't as confidence-inspiring as like the Cybertruck, but it's definitely solid, and it's going to be a massive improvement coming from the ICE version of the Silverado. But when you're on certain roads, you might not have to do any steering at all, because this car comes with GM's legendary Super Cruise, which pretty much is the equivalent of full self-driving. It only works on certain roads, so you can't just use Super Cruise on any road like the road I'm on right now, but when you do use it and when you are able to use it, it works extremely well. And the fact that this car comes with Super Cruise is honestly one of the reasons I feel like a lot of people might opt for this versus the Cybertruck, because at the moment, the Cybertruck does not have autopilot or Tesla full self-driving. Rivian doesn't really have an assisted driving solution. Ford does have Blue Cruise, so right now it's really just GM and Ford as far as electric pickup trucks that are offering any sort of real assisted driving for highway driving and stuff like that. And Super Cruise works just as well here as it does in all the other cars I've tested it in. The last car I had Super Cruise in was the Cadillac Escalade V, and it works flawlessly in that car. It works flawlessly in this car. Super Cruise is just a great feature to have, quite honestly. Now, range is definitely something that I am questioning a little bit. You get a claimed 440 or 450 miles of range with the Silverado EV. With the RST trim, the work truck version gets slightly different range. I did a decent amount of driving today, and I don't think I got 400 miles of range. And normally when I get in the car, I'll get on a little bit, drive it around in sport mode, and maybe hammer on the throttle a few times, but I've been doing very standard sub 80 mile an hour freeway driving for maybe about 150 miles, and I don't see so far that 400-mile range estimate. As far as weather here, it's about 85 degrees, so it's not insanely hot. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is gonna get 400 miles of range all the time. Maybe if you're driving like 50, 60 miles an hour, you can achieve that, but so far, definitely over 350, which still makes this better than the Cybertruck, better than the F-150 Lightning, and maybe better than the Rivian R1T in certain situations. But despite it still being a class leader as far as range on paper, I'm not sure if it's actually achievable, those results, at least in my testing so far. I mean, when I got in the car, I didn't even have a 400 range estimate. And GM is smart, right? So I'm sure at some point they're gonna have an adapter with this car to use Tesla's charging network. That's kind of the big thing that all the OEMs are doing right now, switching over to Tesla's network. And this is kind of just the right move right now because Electrify America, EVgo, all of these other charging station networks, they suck. Assuming you can eventually get an NACS adapter for this, if you combine that with the fact that you should be able to get nearly 400 miles of range in the real world, I think this is probably the best pickup truck to buy based on the range experience alone. Overall, the experience of using this truck is going to be great for people who are looking for the easygoing software experience that GM has been known to provide. But not having Apple CarPlay available for the RST version of this truck definitely is a bit of a letdown, especially when that could be a reason someone opts for this over a Rivian or a Cybertruck. But the fact that the Google software offers built-in apps like Waze and Spotify definitely helps soften the blow. So I've driven this car about 200 miles at this point, and my biggest takeaway is that for the people who own GM pickup trucks that are ICE powered and just want an EV that offers them more benefits to the benefits they already have of owning that ICE powered truck, I think this is really good. And once you can get these for around like high 80s, low 90s, I think this is going to be an excellent buy for the utilitarian. But they also want to compete with the Rivian R1T and the Tesla Cybertruck. And unfortunately, those cars are just a lot cooler. The Cybertruck design is definitely controversial, and there are some people who just aren't into Rivians, but there are a lot of people who are, and those two vehicles have kind of done this thing where they've made pickup trucks cool again. And so they've brought a lot of people who weren't previously interested in owning a pickup truck into getting one. And so I see Rivian R1Ts everywhere. The Cybertrucks are slowly but surely, taking over the streets as we speak. And I feel like while this is a very capable truck and this does a lot of things very well, I don't feel like it's going to be able to compete with those vehicles simply because there isn't really anything super cool about it. In terms of driving, it has 750 horsepower with this RST trim, but it doesn't really have that really throw you back in your seat acceleration, or the launch control isn't that fun. The suspension for, spirited, serious driving on the road is honestly pretty lackluster compared to the R1T with its awesome hydraulic suspension and the Cybertruck with its pretty capable air suspension and really nimble steer-by-wire handling. This car just really doesn't have any of the cool factors when it comes to driving. It doesn't offer anything super unique when it comes to the design either. It's just a really capable pickup truck that happens to be electric. And so GM now has the problem of not only competing with companies like Ford with the F-150 Lightning, which has a similar philosophy to this car, but now competing with Tesla and Rivian, which are both offering pickup trucks that are not only capable for that sort of stuff, but also just cool cars and fun cars to own and drive. This car just doesn't really offer that, unfortunately. Wow, that is hot. But I think for someone who has owned a Chevy pickup truck for a decade or more and is looking to jump into the next wave of vehicles, which is electric cars, and wants something that is a similar experience, I think this is an easy recommendation. I just don't know if I can recommend this over a Rivian R1T or a Cybertruck if you want something that's cool and fun to drive as well, because this just doesn't really offer that, in my opinion. But that's gonna be about it for this video. I think this is a great truck. I just think GM has a bit of an uphill battle ahead with the competition out there, but shout out to GM for sending me out here. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for future content like this. And we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled Jersey programming. Alrighty, talk to you guys in the next one. Question for you. What do you think about the Silverado EV? Are you a fan? No? Anyone else? No?